What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss more about the confusing iOS 17.4.1 update and why next week might be a lot more exciting. We're going to discuss the ridiculous reason that Apple is being sued by the US, more fresh Apple AI news, details about the next AirPods, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And as always, if you want to stay updated with everything going on in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and check out the Apple Den newsletter. All right, so let's start by talking about iOS 17.4.1 because that was released this week. We finally got a software update after going a couple of weeks without any type of release from Apple. Now, unfortunately, 17.4.1 was not very exciting. Actually, it was pretty confusing because we didn't really see anything change for iOS 17.4.1. We saw a minor change to iPadOS 17.4.1 in terms of a bug fix, but really nothing has been discovered or mentioned by Apple in terms of what's actually changed for iOS 17.4.1. So we waited weeks just to really have nothing new. Now, that's kind of expected for a double point update. However, always with the double point updates, we do get security patches, and that's always an important reason for Apple to push out these double point updates. But on the security notes page, you can see Apple still has not updated this for what has actually been fixed with this update. Like, they published it on the website, but they didn't actually share the exact details. So pretty frustrating. And to make this whole situation even more confusing, Apple did not release updates for watchOS, macOS, or tvOS, alongside these iOS and iPadOS releases. So really strange stuff going on, especially when we hear that macOS 14.4 has the most issues out of any of the operating systems. So this week was just pretty bizarre for Apple. However, there was one update this week that was pretty interesting, and that was the AirTag update. And this is hysterical. This is the funniest news of the week. The funniest news I've heard about a software update in a while. So apparently, this was supposed to roll out to only 1% of users when it was rolled out earlier this week, and then slowly roll out to all users by April 9th. That's when 100% of people should have this AirTag update, was April 9th. That's how it should have been. However, it was found in the code that Apple accidentally formatted the deployment dates wrong, and that mistake sent the update out to all AirTags. And you can see that all of my AirTags are updated, and that new firmware version is 2.0.73. That's the update that just came out this week. Your AirTags most likely went ahead and updated automatically, but if they did not update for whatever reason, Apple fixed this bug on the back end where they, put in the format of the date wrong, and now it's not going to be pushed out to those devices except for only 1%, and then everybody's going to get it in April. But I'd imagine the majority of people already got the update this week, but I just thought that was funny. Now, apparently iOS 17.4 enabled a setting that has quite a few people concerned for their privacy, and shout out to Joanna Stern for bringing this to my attention. But if you go into your settings and go to privacy and security, and then go to journaling suggestions, and then if you go down to nearby people, apparently iOS 17.4 automatically enabled the discoverable by others toggle even if you had it off previously. Now, some people just assume that the other person can see your name and see your location and all those things. This feature is not anything to worry about. Like, yes, it's something you probably should turn off, if you're not using this, but it's not near as bad as it seems and what other people made it out to be. It's not like Apple or other people are going to have your contact name or contact, information just from being nearby with you. It only interacts with contacts, and it's just not as big of a deal as other people made it seem. So I am going to disable this now. I didn't even realize it was enabled for me, so you might want to go ahead and disable that as well if it was turned on for you, which it apparently automatically turned on 17.4. So last week, Apple put out the release notes for their shortcuts changes in iOS 17.4, and I briefly talked about the changes made in shortcuts, but I just wanted to share very quickly some real life examples of a couple of these shortcuts in action. So the first one is orientation based. So this new action right here, which is get orientation, that's the new action added with iOS 17.4. And you can see you can change this to if the orientation is, and you could have it set to portrait upside down, face up, face down. You have all those options. So, here's how I have mine set up. If the orientation is portrait, like if I have it holding up like this, it's going to open up selfie. If the result is landscape left, so I have it facing this way, it's going to open up the video camera. And if it's face down, it's going to turn my phone into do not disturb when I run this shortcut. And this I have set to my action button. So anytime I press my action button and, if I have my phone face down and then press the action button, it's going to do not disturb turned on. And same with when I'm in landscape mode. All I have to do is press on my action button and it's going to launch this shortcut and it's going to see it's in landscape mode and then it's going to open up the video camera. So this has been super useful and it's really nice to not have to go through a third party now because everything happens much quicker and it's all on device now instead of going through that third party app. And then the other action that was added is get physical activity. And this one is really interesting. I didn't even really talk about this much last week, but you can see that the if here is if physical activity is, and you have these different sections here, these different, type of triggers, which is stationary, walking, running, cycling, or in a vehicle, whether moving or not. And that is really cool because you can see I have it set here to if the physical activity is cycling, it's going to start the outdoor cycle workout on my Apple Watch. But if I am in a stationary vehicle, it's going to automatically open up Waze. And of course, you can do other things as well in here, but those are just a couple of examples I found for the get physical activity action here, which super useful once again. Also this week, we finally saw the release of Call of Duty Warzone Mobile. This has been talked about for a long time and it finally launched worldwide on both iPhone and Android. However, iPhones and iPads are the only devices able to run at the peak graphics mode. Only the 15 Pro and Pro Max and the M series iPads are able to run this game at the highest graphics. And by the way, this application is great. It's very fun, but it takes up a lot of space. 7.47 gigabytes on my main phone here, and that's without the peak graphics downloaded. So it's probably going to be well over 10 gigabytes after I download that. Now, as far as the performance and the battery life goes on 17.4 and 17.4.1, I'm going to bunch them together because it's about the same. I really didn't see any improvement in performance or battery life with 17.4.1. Now, granted, it's only been a day. I'm recording this on Friday and the software came out on Thursday, so I can't say for sure, but usually with these double point updates, you don't see a massive difference in performance or battery life. So I'm not expecting anything major to be changed here. And you can see I did run that Geekbench score yesterday. If you missed the video, we did score, let me go back here, CPU history. We scored a 2947 on the single core and a 7307. And you can see how that compares to 17.4. So it is higher, but I haven't really noticed any difference there, at least in terms of performance. And then when it comes to battery life, I did also update my main device to 17.4.1 as soon as the software was released. And again, not really seeing any difference. I would not expect any difference in battery life, but again, it's too early. I've only had it installed for about a day, so it's hard to say, but it feels about the same so far. We really haven't seen a big battery improvement since like 17.2, and I really don't expect that to change anytime soon, at least not till iOS 18 potentially. Okay, so now let's talk about what to expect next from Apple, because next week might be exciting. This week was boring. The past couple of weeks have been boring. Next week might actually be exciting. I'm not going to get your hopes up. I'm not trying to, be super hypey here, but I do just want to say that next week could be a good one because I think we are going to see iOS 17.5 beta 1 next week. Obviously, we've been saying that for weeks now, so it's hard to say for sure. Nobody on planet Earth knows when Apple is actually releasing software. Everybody just makes predictions and guesses, myself included. We just have to use, history to base our future predictions. Nobody actually knows when it's going to get released. I don't believe anybody who thinks they actually know. Anyways, so we should see 17.5 beta 1 next week. Now, the whole reason 17.5 beta 1 has been taking a while to release, and this is just a theory, but it's been kind of confirmed at this point by the fact that we still don't have it, is that it has references to the new iPads, the iPad Air and iPad Pro in the code, which would make sense. So of course, Apple's not going to release the software that gives away their future products, before they actually get announced. So with that being said, we could see the new iPads announced as early as Monday, the 25th. As early as. Now, Mark Gurman came out and said that we're not going to see the announcement on the 26th, which Apple typically announces new iPads, at least the past couple of times in history. They've announced them on a Tuesday. So it's pretty interesting that the rumor claimed it was going to be released on the 26th, but then Mark Gurman said, nope, it's not coming out on the 26th, or it's not getting announced on the 26th. Anyway, yeah, so we could see that as early as the 25th. The 27th is also possible, but Apple typically announces new products on Mondays or Tuesdays. So if we do get the announcement on the 25th. I would expect iOS 17.5 beta 1 the following day on the 26th. Apple doesn't typically release beta software on Mondays. That's actually pretty rare. So yeah, so we could get new iPad announcements and also new beta software as early as next week. Okay, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news. And let's start with easily the biggest story of the week, the fact that Apple just got sued by the US Department of Justice. So they filed an antitrust lawsuit against Apple for operating an illegal monopoly in the smartphone market. And these allegations were just more of the same allegations we've been hearing for a while now. It's really nothing new in this lawsuit, which is why it's so baseless in my opinion. Like if you look, it says blocking super apps, which disrupts the growth of apps that would make it easier to switch between competing platforms, blocking cloud streaming applications, suppressing the experience of messaging between iPhone and Android, diminishing the functionality of third-party smartwatches, and thus making users who purchase the Apple Watch face, quote, substantial out-of-pocket costs if they do not keep buying iPhones, as if there's really people out there buying an Apple Watch that don't have an iPhone. And that's also like saying, I mean, Samsung does the same thing. The Samsung Watch only works with a Samsung phone or, Android software. It doesn't work with iOS software, so they're doing the same thing. This is like nothing illegal here going on. And then also they say preventing third-party app developers from creating competing digital wallets with tap to pay. And a big issue here is that the DOJ is considering Apple a monopoly. They're considering the iPhone a monopoly in the smartphone niche. But they only have, I shouldn't say only, but they have a 60% market share in the US, which is not typically considered a monopoly. Usually a monopoly is like, 80, 90+%. Now, Windows had a monopoly back in the day. And there's a couple of funny tidbits in here as well. Like the DOJ literally says that Apple is to blame for the Amazon Fire phone failing and several other phones that are completely irrelevant, were going to be irrelevant from the start, no matter what was on the market. They're blaming the iPhone for that. And they also claim that if you switch from an iPhone to an Android, you will face, quote, significant financial, technological, and behavioral obstacles, such as learning how to use Android. Is that not the same for every phone manufacturer out there? I mean, that seems completely like targeted at Apple for no real reason. It seems like they're just reaching for anything they can grab at. Now, Apple did respond to this. They put out a statement and they said at the end, we believe this lawsuit is wrong on the facts and the law, and we will vigorously defend against it. So do not doubt Apple when it comes to defending, their operating system, their ecosystem. So they're going to fight to the death, which is why I don't think anything is going to happen to this for years. Like, do I think this is actually going to make change for Apple? Is going to force change for Apple? Unfortunately, yes, I do think it's going to, but I don't think it's going to be something we see for a while. Like, we're probably not going to see anything come from this for at least a couple of years. These things typically take a very long time to come to a resolution. And I'm all for good legislation when it comes to technology, whether that's, enabling developers, like siding with developers, or when it comes to your privacy or security. I'm all for making changes for that. But this just seems like it missed the mark in every way possible. But I could be wrong. I'm looking at this. I'm trying to look at this from an outsider's view and not like an Apple fan, but I just can't see any world where this lawsuit makes any sense. Okay, so now let's talk about Apple's new partnership with Google. So apparently, Apple is in talks with Google to implement its Gemini AI model into the iPhone. And a lot of people saw this headline early in the week and said, I thought Apple was working on their own AI. Whatever happened to that? But the thing is, Apple's in-house AI models are going to reportedly be on device rather than pulling from the cloud. And that's why they need a partner to do the heavy lifting of generative AI. This includes things like creating images and writing essays based on simple prompts. We're not going to see an announcement until the summer, it appears, but Apple is definitely working on partnering with somebody for their generative AI that's hopefully coming in iOS 18. I think some of it will definitely be in iOS 18, but we may not see like the more mature version of it until later down the road, but we'll see. And speaking of AI, Apple's new AI model was also revealed earlier this week. So this new model is called MM1, and this is a family of multimodal models that are capable of handling images and text. And the example that was shown in the paper, which was published by Apple researchers, shows that it can accurately answer how much should I pay for all the beer on the table according to the price on the menu. So there's a picture of the menu that's real small and also all of the items on that table. And you can see it was successfully able to answer that question. Now, the models range up to 30 billion parameters and are competitive with the initial versions of Google Gemini. And this new MM1 model also features in-context learning, which allows it to understand and respond to queries based on the context provided without any prior conversation or retraining necessary. So it's always cool to see Apple open sourcing information, especially when it comes to things like their LLM models. So we mentioned earlier that the new iPads might be getting announced as early as next week, but we have some new rumors as well to talk about the actual products themselves. So it looks like 2 sizes of the next-gen iPad Air are now shipping to the United States and other countries in preparation for a launch, which means we are definitely going to be seeing those in April. That's the expected time to reach customers' hands, is at some point in April. There's also new rumors for the iPad Pro that say it's going to have slimmer bezels and also a matte screen option, similar to the Studio Display's nano texture glass. Now, we also got new details on the upcoming AirPods 4th generation that could be coming out as early as this year. So this came from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, and he says that Apple suppliers will begin production on 2 different models of the upcoming AirPods 4 in May. Now, here's where it gets interesting and why I think that this might be partially wrong, but he says that the models are referred to as entry and mid-tier since they'll be replacing the AirPods 2 and 3. Both models will have a new design, improved fit, and a new charging case with USB-C. The mid-tier model will feature active noise cancellation and a speaker in the charging case, which can play a sound via Find My. And he said that based on the production timeframe, these are expected to be released in September or October. And the reason I said that this might be wrong is because I don't really see, and I could be wrong myself, but I don't really see any reason that Apple would add noise cancellation, active noise cancellation to the AirPods when we had the AirPods Pro still expected. Now, the caveat to that is if we're not hearing something, if there's something we're missing about the upcoming AirPods Pro 3rd generation, which by the way, those are not expected until 2025. We're not going to see AirPods Pro, new AirPods Pro this year. They're going to be next year. So we could be missing something about the next gen AirPods Pro because if the lower tier, the mid-tier AirPods have noise cancellation, why would somebody buy the AirPods Pro? You know what I mean? So there has to be something big that's coming to the AirPods Pro. That's my theory. We may get something really big on the next generation AirPods Pro, whether that's a screen on the outside of the case. That's something we've seen patented by Apple. So we could see a screen on the outside, like a touch screen on the outside of the AirPods Pro 3, or we may see something else completely different. You know, maybe the temperature sensors, all that, maybe that's going to be the selling point, but it looks like the active noise cancellation could be coming down to the regular AirPods. But again, the only way I see that happening is if the AirPods Pro 3 have a major change to them. And then finally, just as tradition, let's talk about another crazy AirTag story. This time, a woman in Miami broke up with her boyfriend late last year, but he wouldn't take no as an answer when he demanded her to call him. So he resorted to the only logical thing to do to stalk and harass her. According to an arrest report, he drove by her house every day, and on one occasion, she discovered 3 alarming handwritten letters duct taped to her car's windshield. And on at least 2 occasions, she found AirTags in her car that were tracking her movements. And then of course the classic, when she blocked him, he called her phone from an unknown number and left multiple threatening voicemails saying that if she did not call him, he would, quote, do something bad to her. The fact that this man that was arrested is 57 years old proves that this type of behavior does not get better with age. But anyways, guys, there you have it. That is the latest in the world of Apple. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. Also, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on next week's Apple Weekly episode. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.